Okay, doing chapter 22, Black Child Parents, the New Factor in Black Genocide. The ISIS paper is by Dr.Frances Cress Welsing. So before we begin, does anyone have anything that they want to, not anyone, can we all just give a little summary of what we had read and how it affected you, if it affected you at all. I'll go first. So this chapter is really important to me because it brings to light kind of a issue that kind of is made invisible, and even are even presented as something that's not an issue, because you have so many TV shows these days glorifying children who are essentially parents, such as like 16 and pregnant, and I'm having a baby as a teenager, and all these things where you see teenagers giving, I guess you say, fame and fortune, giving a TV show just because they're having a child. And the fact that, more than 25% of Black parents are teenagers is definitely a problem within, the Black community or the Black collective, because you guys know how I feel about the term community. But yeah, so I thought it was really important. I thought it definitely is a new factor in the genocide, because essentially you have a group of parents who are raising children who will not be able to survive in the complex system that we have to survive in. And that system is, of course, racism, white supremacy, the system in which we all are dominated by white supremacists, and we are oppressed by white supremacists in all of the areas of all the areas of people activity are affected, such as, religion, sex, war, politics, economy, education, entertainment, counter war, and war. I may be missing a few. But anyone want to jump in? Share your thoughts on 22.
Yeah, I'll go. This chapter brought up a lot of feelings for me, because it made me realize that, this is a malignant problem, a malignant generational problem in the Black family that has much further reaching implications that we have even considered. Even myself, coming from a family with both of my parents there, the issue was not having received the necessary nurturing to develop in a healthy fashion in every area, and reaching puberty and then young adulthood, adolescence, and adulthood, seeking to find that nurturing, that love that was missing. I'm a teenage father. I was a teenage father myself, and she described my experience. I know we're gonna delve into this. I know I got a lot of stuff highlighted, but that's the general. That's the general review that I have of this, is that it shows in detail, in depth, dissecting the generational cycle of this immature, this lack of maturity on the part of the parents, and the chronic effects of it. I had to. I was reading it this morning, shoot, after I read it, I had to break my rule to myself and try to relax a little bit, do a little bit of meditation because this is
Yeah,
emotional.
it is. And I know
Yes.
this. Um, I only have like two things from the chapter highlighted, and I think it's divine that you have like a lot of notes that you want to get through because I only have like two things that I had jotted down. I think this chapter is really similar to the chapter before it, but that's I'm really excited to hear what you have, and also to like learn from your lived experiences. To me, lived experiences is the most
I highly resonated with
accurate
it.
data. What do you say?
Yeah, I was saying that I highly resonated with a lot of what Ben said as well, and
Yeah.
you as well. Like both of your summaries definitely clicked to the things that my mind came to when reading chapter 22. It was highly triggering for me. I would have to say, like the way that she broke down the black families and the result of having single parent living in a single parent household, the way that the government is influenced in that, and how like even the needs of the government, just so you don't play with that welfare, you see in the parents' interactions, and as well as the feelings of worthlessness when you have a parent that necessarily didn't choose you or focuses more on work and you are left to be minded by your other family members, even if it's not work related. That sense of worthlessness or not building a relationship with the mother or father parent, how that affects you, the way that she broke that down. And like I just honor Dr. Frances Cress Welsing for her work and focus on actually putting this into context. It was really 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 healing to see that it's universal amongst us as black people, but it's not and yeah, it's just not an individual problem. Okay.
All right, so yeah, I just want to start by reading something that really stuck out to me. To me, like this, it's just important information. Also, it kind of summarizes and can summarizes the whole chapter and like what is the most. Not I want to let me not give hierarchies to knowledge. It's just something that I found very very important. Um, Give me a second. My iPad is not on the page anymore. 1 second. 259. I have it. Yeah, 259. Oh yeah. All right. So on page 259, it says, yet 25% of all black children born today in the U.S. are born to black teenagers. This means that at the very least, 25% of all black children will suffer in terms of their development and will be impaired in their potential to function effectively under the stress of racism. I refer to the failure to ensure the maximal development of the genetic potential of all Black children, as well as the ultimate waste of the genetic potential as Black genocide. So when I read that part, I was like, it's true. If you are reproducing your image, aka if you're like having children, if you're reproducing your image, it's up to you to make sure that image doesn't get shattered as it reaches adulthood. It's up to you to make sure that image stays intact, symbolically keeping your genes intact. Keeping your kids, healthy, happy, and on the path of on a life path that's going to be for the betterment of themselves and for the black race as a whole. So yeah, if you're not doing that, then you are ultimately doing the opposite. You're wasting the genetic potential. You know, imagine how many like amazing black children are like stuck in places uh, stuck in places that they can't get out of because of their households.
Mm. Yeah, so it's real difficult. That's real. That hits at the right at the foundation, at the core of the solution. So I appreciate you going right straight to the solution. You know, self-definition, define myself. Don't let somebody else tell me who and what I'm supposed to be. And hold your ground and stand your ground. And I love the writer for just bringing us back to dignity and the importance of maturity and intelligence and adulthood. We're a bunch of adult children running around out here that haven't fully developed. Doesn't matter what age. I like what you just said, Trey. I like that.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I agree with you. I agree 100%. We are walking children. If we are not, being codified, living with intentions, aware of our surroundings, aware of our positionality in the world, if we're not speaking truth to our reality, we are in fact children. So that's why I'm trying to be codified and solve this problem of racism, white supremacy. And growing up in South Central LA, I see a lot of you know, child parents, meaning I see adults, so people in their 30s and their 40s who are still operating as children, you know, hoping that their children can raise them and hoping that their children can like give them the love that their parents failed to give them. So it's continued cycles of suffering, continued behavior patterns that are self-negating and non-constructive. And I also want to read a bit from page 260.
Hey, can you touch on this before you move on? Right at the end of
Yeah, definitely.
59 today, just as in the slave society, Black teenage girls are caught up in similar destructive dynamics, producing human beings who subsequently are subjected to low level development and treatment. So it's just powerful that regardless of where it came from, even whether it's from slavery or today, the results are the same. We're still suffering the same psychological and emotional trauma as we did in slavery. I just wanted to emphasize that.
Yep.
We're still in slavery.
Yeah.
And at the time, I feel more aware that we're being oppressed. Yeah, that we're yeah. It's before, I feel like they were more naive, just educated enough to keep it that. Unfortunately for them, we've become way more educated. There's such internet now, but access to YEs. But yeah, and they're doing their oppression much
Your
like
sound
people
is
do.
wavy, Mayor. Your sound is wavy.
Yeah,
I
they're
can't
lagging a
understand.
bit. Yeah, they're lagging a bit. Can you start over?
Um,
You know that echoey, wavy sound where you can't really.
Can you hear me now? Try that now. Is it echo now?
think it's a little better.
Okay. Know where you just
It's a bit better.
okay. Do you hear me?
It's still doing this, pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
Now it's okay.
Okay, I was just saying that at least this time, although we're still being oppressed, at least I feel like we're more awake and or aware of it. Although we're not in a situation where we're trying to stop it clearly as a whole, there's a few of us, but as a whole, we're not there to try and stop it. But at least now we're aware of what's happening to us. Whereas before in slavery, I don't think they were aware. Not I don't think, I'm sure they weren't aware. All the things that they were setting in place for their hundreds of generations of their kids and families after. Whereas now we're aware of it. So at least we'll probably be able to make the change for the future.
It's easier for us to network with each other now. It's easier
Yeah.
for us to like catch on, like right now, us sharing this cast of having this book club, sharing our wisdom and learning from one another. As not only am I learning at a faster rate by hearing what you have to say, Ben, and what you're saying, Tracia, from your decoding of reading this, but the people who are now going to watch this can learn it at a faster rate. So we have more of a chance now of ending the oppression of white supremacy over us, at least mentally.
Yeah. Whereas before, like you said, in slavery, as much as it's the same as slavery, it's not the same because we're way more.
First of all, I want to just jump in. I totally disagree. I do not think we are more aware. I think Black people are even more confused when they were slaves, because when they were enslaved, they had the physical abuse constantly, so they knew that they were, they knew that they were inferior. They knew that they were like, subjected to something that was inescapable. Now it's more covert, and people are thinking racism is someone like calling you a bad name or like, belittling you. Racism is very complex. So I don't think we're more informed. I think Black people are still just as confused as we were when we were enslaved. And I also think this part I'm about to read also sheds light on what has been said by everyone. This is on page 260. The more complex a social system becomes, the higher level of emotional maturity and formal education needed to negotiate that system successfully. Often, the ultimate level of functioning reached by children is correlated with the level of emotional maturity achieved by the parents. Prior to the birth of the child, in brief, emotionally immature and poorly educated parents raise children who are more likely to fail than children of emotionally mature and well-educated parents. Although income is an important factor, it is less important factor than emotional maturity and successfully rearing a child, particularly non-white children living under the conditions of white supremacy. So when I read this stuff like that, it reminds me that this type of information is rare. This is not common information. People are not aware that they have to raise their children to be aware of the system they're living in. They have to speak honestly to their children. For example, you can't tell your kids, "Oh, we live in an unfair world. Some people are unlucky." You have to tell your kids, "Hey, we live in a society that is dictated by racism, white supremacy. Racism, white supremacy is an organized institution that governs all 9 areas of human activity, of people activity, of life activity." So this is not just some black and white system. It's very complex. The information is very, very advanced. And for you to be able to understand it, you have to have some type of emotional maturity. So you have to be emotionally able to receive that you are being mistreated 24/7. Most of the times when you leave your home, because we are living in a society that is trained to treat black people very poorly. And I also think this type of information can allow Black parents to rear their children positively when it comes to school. Because I know when I was a kid, I definitely disliked school a lot because I knew that I was under attack when I was in the classroom. I never felt comfortable. I hated learning that I was a slave. I hated learning that Black people kept getting assassinated. I kept learning, I hated learning about, Europeans who were great killers and conquerors. All of this information, dampened my self-image. So, yeah, I just don't have to interject and share that.
And also we're deeply unconscious.
Yeah.
The slaves, were not murdering each other.
Yeah.
Not just, they may have had differences or fought or whatever, had their funk, but they weren't murdering each other in the streets. We're so deeply, we're in many ways, you hear me, China? We're in many ways worse off than we were during slavery.
Because you're totally off
the
conversation, so I don't think they're listening.
Okay, there's a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
There's a new phenomenon going on in the streets right now, and that's young Black boys when they get their heart broken by their young Black girlfriends. They're murdering them, gunning them down in the streets in Oakland. Yes, we're deeply unconscious, and the slaves were not doing that to each other. They have really gotten us to hate ourselves so much. This white supremacist trick has worked so well that they're able to get the slaves to murder each other when they don't need an overseer, and they don't need a slave master to beat them down. They get the other slaves to murder each other without even asking. And the reason I brought it up, because it happened again. 22 more girls. Okay, this happened in front of my house about a month ago, China. The beautiful 19-year-old girl was murdered by her boyfriend in front of my house. I live in a white neighborhood. So the following week, it happened again to a 25-year-old girl in East Oakland. And then this past weekend, it happened again. And the guy went and killed the girl and the new boyfriend.
So I just want to say that this is a prime example of the refinement of white supremacy. This is white supremacy being refined to the point where the Black male and the Black female's relationship have been so separated from itself and so tarnished by mass media culture, by their relationships that is continuously projected through music. All of these things have a direct effect on the unconscious mind, and that leads to these bizarre, horrific behavior patterns that manifest within the people on planet Earth who have been classified as Black. And what you said about young kids becoming more active, even in South Central. I'm getting information from my family who are living there. They're saying that they don't know where they came from, but a whole new wave of youngins who are just actively shooting and killing people. People are getting shot more often in the hood, and they're supposed to be a truce because of what happened to Nipsey, but that's out the window. All these young kids are just out, becoming hyper violent, and it's just
what you say. I want to comment on what you're saying. You saying that just literally reminds me of the fact that these younger generations are more and more desensitized. We had as white supremacy gets older, its techniques gets more cohesive or gets more strategic. Mm-hmm. And we had the benefit growing up I'd say our generation growing up in the 90s, we had the benefit of being able to play outside, being able to create bonds in a different way, where the previous generation before us, I believe they had a little bit more empathy. Mm-hmm. The generations coming now, they've grown up with pure technology as their first instrument. and that's extremely a desensitized platform that will just allow them, like, there's a statement, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing talks about single parent households, or how they have focused to make sure the Black man and Black woman don't operate in don't operate in one household. So what's that doing for a young child? If a parent or a single parent has to work, you're leaving them to be educated by their TV, by the programming that's there to teach them how to objectify people, how to objectify others. So it's not alarming that these kids are taking out their miseducation out on the only person that gives them a source of validation being their girlfriend, and they've objectified that object, just like how you buy a car, a bike, anything that adds value to you. The girlfriend is seen as a value, something that you add value to, and he felt like he could take its life away just as you could break down the car, because that's the education is objectification and be desensitized, and that's the first thing I feel like we need to do as a people, reprogram ourselves to have empathy first for ourselves first, and that's self-respect in itself. Yeah.
They think they can kill people like it's Fortnite.
Say louder.
They think they can kill people like it's Fortnite.
Literally.
Well, this is, I don't get it. That's what they're playing. Fortnite.
Literally.
Right. The video game.
And so I read everything I had to read from this chapter. If anyone
I've got something.
burn through what they have, please do so. If not, I will move to closing comments. You know.
One moment.
So I know Ben, you have some stuff to go down, and please go down all of it. For my notes, I go through everything I write down, because I believe in sharing all the information that I have gathered that I find of value. So if you have notes from
Well, just at the end of that paragraph, that you read, and China just made reference to it, and Mary just made reference to it, where it says, although income is an important factor, it is a less important factor than emotional maturity and successful rearing, particularly a non-white child. You know, that objectifying, where money, property is your prestige, and that totally trumps everything.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters except money.
Yeah.
And so that's what China and Mary were both making reference to, the objectifying, and where it's what she said about income is less important than emotional maturity. And we need to really emphasize prioritizing our emotional development more than our economical development. Even though the economical development is very important, it's running a strong second, but we're not going to be able to manage it and develop our children without the emotional maturity.
I think we've gone enough years with trying to put the economical thing first, and it hasn't been working. So I think it's time to start trying to work on the psychological part of it, and then, you know, because all these years of putting money first and the economy first and your image first hasn't been working. We've just got a generation of children who don't know what to do, really and truly.
Money driven, but they don't. But they don't actually, they don't actually know how to actually acquire it, and they do the fast way that are literally system traps that end up put them into the pipeline.
Literally, but the jails were made for them. So
yeah.
So why are so many teenage children engaging in this high degree of sexual activity and producing children from whom they are unable to provide sufficient care?
I mean,
that's a question on page 261.
Yeah, I have some answers to that, and I'm sure we all have our answers, and we can answer from historical data, or we can answer from personal lived experiences. But one of the reasons why that's the case is, you know, the trauma from slavery. You know, having a lot of children and teenagers molested and raped by their their handlers at the time, their captors at the time, um, while also thank you, while also having while also having sorry, got distracted.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah. So why this thing? Also, the trauma from slavery, having being raped and molested by the masters of during slavery, the white people, and also like that trauma being hyperly sexualized. That trauma is still carried in our DNAs. I know when I was like a child, I was engaging in like sexual activities at a very young age. So were a lot of the kids in my neighborhood. It was very normalized. So and like not really having sexual like what guidelines given to me from like a parent, not having any like conversations about it. The first conversation I had with my mom about sex was after I already had sex, so it was kind of like after the fact and kind of like more of a punishment than anything, yeah. So those types of things is why, and I can go on and on. I can talk about the music. I can talk about how there we have associated glory with sex. We've associated with empowerment with sex, and these kids want to be empowered and they want to, they want to feel special, and they feel like a part of having a relationship is sex. So they want to, engage in sex to sustain their relationships. They want to, they've been also brainwashed by mass media culture. Most of these films are sexually exploitive. Most of the music is super sexually exploitive. I know any rap song you hear is going to be extremely detrimental to like, womanhood for sure. So yeah, I can go on and on about the many reasons why this is happening. And that's just like only 1%. Because that's keep in mind, every area of people activity influences these behavior patterns.
I think it's so prophetic because this is like 1980 or whatever when she wrote it, and we were just talking about how our kids are murdering each other on another level.
Yep, refinement. Yeah.
And she talked about it right here, right after that sentence. She goes, there's an underlying dynamic forcing the children to these behaviors that border on homicide, most certainly emotional and psychological homicide.
Wow. It's refined to the point where it actually is killing now. It actually is, kids killing kids. I know when I was in high school, one of my friends went to prison like for life for being involved in the incident where another kid was killed. So it's so sad that the psychological and emotional damage has manifested out to it, causing physical harm to the vessels that we have been gifted by the multiverse. Um, I've been keep going on your notes. If you guys have notes you want to get through, now's your time. Like I said earlier, I've went through my notes.
First of all, with the earlier statements that you were making, like I totally agree. Like if you think about the terminology, like sex cells, that's all that's been like echoed to us as, like I was saying, the statement of us watching TV, growing up with children. That's like our education system, and as sex cells, I was growing up listening to songs like "Loosen Up My Buttons." Like everything was, I don't know how to describe, but everything was sex orientated before I even knew what that was. So that program in itself, just it's like it's like girls are groomed to want marriage while boys are groomed to whatever you guys are groomed to. Yeah, but girls, it's like they put the system in place for that to happen, and in the UK as well. Like I'm not sure how it is in America, but one way that we are like stimulated towards like housing or like owning our own property. Yeah, if you you go up in the council register if you are pregnant. So like I remember being like people who were like 16 and wanting their own place because they're not getting along with their parents and having to run away. There was more chances of you getting on the house register if you were pregnant. And understanding that psychology, lots of people ended up doing that. So they definitely encourage children having children because it creates what Dr. Frances Cress Welsing is talking about of inadequate thinking, unable to function highly in society, and being able to be dominated and oppressed by the white counterparts who have been educated or raised in an adequate environment where they have everything that they need for their own survival.
Ben, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm sure something's kind of happened in like the 80s when like America, they were giving, I don't know, more housing help to women who didn't have men in their homes, the fathers in their houses. Yep. So they were promoting single mother housing situations, correct? Yeah. I do remember like TV shows.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it kind of the same things happening where they're telling our younger women that we're pregnant.
Even today, for some women, if you want to get welfare, there cannot be a black, well, can't be a male inside the household. So that's still.
Yeah, what is that?
Ben, do you want to?
That applies to Section 8 as well.
Section 8.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Section 8. So strategically, you know, white supremacists know, like if the black male and the black female are in the same place, if they are working together on solving this problem, it will get solved. And and they're very much aware of that. So that's why there's a strong pull to you know, ensure that black men intermingle with you know, non-black women, white women, and every woman but black women, basically. That's why you see a lot of films with like a black male is in a relationship with a white woman, or like another non-black woman, such as Hitch. Will Smith is paired with a non-black female, and I think Hancock, Will Smith again is paired with a you know, non-black female. When the black male and the black female work together, this problem will be solved. You know, it can be solved. It's a very solvable problem. You know, the white supremacists are aware of that. So they are strategically making sure that we are separated, and that is via, like, you know, locking the men in prison, killing the men, you know, locking the women in prison, killing the women. You know, it's the free for all here. You guys know what's going on.
Okay. Because I had a question, but you kind of just answered it, or maybe something. I was going to say, as much as they don't want us to be together, they're kind of stuck in a rut because they also don't want us to mate with them neither, if that makes sense. Because once we mate with them, that child is black. So you can keep us apart, but we're just going to keep multiplying our population if we mate with you. So what do you want here? So yeah, like you said, they just made the jails and killed us. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. They actually killed Martin Luther King because, you know, he was, you know, making blacks and whites too close. So that's totally right. They do not like that either. But you know, it's all about, to me, this right here. You wanna keep it in context. So I go back to the color confirmation theory. The darker the skin color, the more fear and the more, you know, the more the doom is projected upon the non-melanated person. So, for example, a white person sees someone who's highly melanated, they're reminded of their genetic, you know, inadequacies. They're reminded of their inability to produce melanin. So, the whole possibility of them being genetically annihilated is made very real, and it reminds them that through nature, they naturally will not probably still be on the planet if things were to work out naturally.
Are you muted? He just became quiet all of a sudden.
No, I stopped talking.
Then you have people that have made a career of having babies for a living here. It's lucrative. The more kids you have, the more money you get from welfare.
Aqua
You know, yeah. And just the cycle just continues. And like you said, Trey, if the greatest fear is for the king and the queen to reunite, because then there will be balance and power. There won't be if a healthy connection between the black king and queen will bring the feminine intelligence back into because it's been relegated over centuries to servitude. So we're actually operating at half speed. No European woman has ever reached the level of the queen, like Queen Cleopatra. That's in my writing. Queen Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of Egypt. They never reached that level of prominence where they're actually sitting on the throne, ruling the entire kingdom. So then that's the fear that and I know this is going to sound extreme because we're in a white supremacist conditioning, but their biggest fear is for the black god mother, queen mother god, and the king father to return to the throne. That's their big fear with Obama, and that's their big fear with Kamala Harris. It's the visual, it's the image of the black king and queen of the world returning to the throne and their child. And that's why you have all the way from the beginning of writing. It started with Aset, Asir, and Heru, and then Nimrod. It was actually Nimrod, Ishtar, and Tammuz before that in Persia, and then it went to Isis, Osiris, and Horus, which is the Egyptian god, but those are the Greek names. And then when it got to Greek and Roman, you had Apollo, the three Greek, Apollo, whatever shit. Then you had the Roman one was Zeus, Cupid, and the other god, and then it finally became Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. They're just the latest, and so they replaced the black queen mother god with this Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And that's their fear, that you will find out that God, their God, is black.
Yep, a set in Peru.
Where did they find out? They know already. It's described in the Bible
Yeah.
that they read.
I have something that I wanted to read from pages 267. Just the end chapter, I think, just the end paragraph, I think is very important. The emotional and psychological underdevelopment of an entire people can become chronic and permanent once this dynamic affects a sufficient percentage of the population. As I have previously stated, 25% of Black children being born in the US are a part of this cycle of emotional underdevelopment. The basis for functional inferiority. Blacks would be horrified if anyone suggested the outright slaughtering of 25% of Black children. Again, Blacks scream genocide when outspoken white supremacists suggest sterilization of 25% or more of the Black population. Yet the aforementioned pattern of child parenting present widespread in the Black population achieves exactly the same results. The only difference is that the Black child parent, the Black child's death is more painful and drawn out, a living death. It is a living death in this highly complex society to be left unable to sit still in school and achieve academically because incorrect socialization. It is a living death for a child to be shifted repeatedly from foster home to another. It is a living death for a child to walk the streets addicted to drugs or alcohol. It is a living death to be a school dropout. It is a living death to walk the streets as a prostitute. It is a living death to streak around the street as a thief. it is a living death to suffer the depression of unemployment because you are uneducated and unskilled. It is a living death for a child to be attacked by teachers and others for being bad, meaning his or her behavior is unsocialized. It is a living death for a child to be confined to a psychiatric hospital. It is a living death to spend a lifetime locked up behind the bars of a juvenile detention center or prison cell. Depression that results from not having had sufficient patient and confident mothering is also a living death. I could go on, but just I really liked and was triggered by the way that Dr. Frances Cress Welsing described these behaviors as being living deaths, and it's true. Why wouldn't white supremacy allow us to populate ourselves to experience basically being living zombies because we're not actively rising up against these and creating social policies in place that enable us to not experience these any further so we can deal with other humane issues of life like global warming. We have to actually deal with these aspects first before we can be fully functional in society. Otherwise, we are literally walking around living dead until the next problem hits us. And the way that society is set up, if you're not being tackled in one way, on the psychosocial, emotional, well-developed way, you're being tackled with your finances, you're being tackled in another way that doesn't allow you to reach a certain level of self-actualization, to even understand what that even means. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that part of her describing it as a living death, and I feel like it kind of summarizes a lot of the things that we've been talking about the actions of that young boy killing his girlfriend. That he was with that mentality, he was walking around living dead. At this point now, he's going to prison. His life is over. So it's just another check for the system.
Well,
What
that's
does everyone else
interesting.
make of that concept of living
I
living
actually
dead?
didn't understand until you started explaining it. But I'm going to say straight after, I don't understand anything you just said, literally. But then your description after, thank you. Helped me out. So yeah, I ain't got nothing to say after.
Yeah, well, I want to just provide some more context for what it means to be living, like living dead. So basically, um, if you're unprepared to take care of yourself, that's a problem. That's already one problem. If you're unprepared to take care of yourself in a complex system of racism, white supremacy, which is the system that we all live in, that's all of our realities. If you're unprepared to live with that's an even worse problem, and that is certain death because there are 9 areas of people activity. All of those areas are dominated and patrolled by racism, white supremacy. So for you to survive, it's gonna take you to be somewhat aware of what's going on. And if you're not informed, you're just basically walking dead or like living dead. And Mary, what's the actual term, Mary? What was the term that is used in the book? Living dead.
Living death.
Living
Death.
death. Yeah. So, for example, it's a living death for like a black man, for example, to be college educated and not be aware that his emotions can get him executed on someone's cell. Just get him executed and have him turned into a hashtag. So, for example, because I'm aware of white supremacy, racism, and like the behavior patterns that are expected and supposed to happen, if I am stopped by the race soldiers, aka police officers, I know not to get emotional because emotionals are certain death. I know the European mindset, the European necessarily is anti-emotion. So I know just to be very, very stoic and statuistic, because I think about these things. How do I survive? How do I keep my gene pool alive? Because emotions is the quickest way to be annihilated in the system. This is a chess game. This is no room for being sad or blaming or complaining. This is chess, and it's strategic. And if you're unaware of the game that's being played, you will just be fodder. And that's why so many black men are so easily enticed to a life of imprisonment because they let their emotions get the best of them, and they end up being in prison for the rest of their lives because they get into a bar fight, or they end up killing someone, or they end up, getting over on someone, and then they want revenge. Like, these things are emotion led, and they're emotion led is because there's no thought in it. You don't think about what's going to happen afterwards. If you thought about what's going to happen afterwards, it wouldn't be emotion led. It'd be more, methodical, or consciously organized for it to be a part of your reality. I don't think anyone consciously says, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go to jail afterwards, to people do that. I hope I was able to provide more context, because I do think this information is very valuable, and life-saving.
I absolutely agree, and that was very profound what you shared, Mary. You guys just sophisticated intellects, just the way, the level that you're breaking the stuff down, the understanding that I'm getting is just phenomenal. And
Thank you.
But there's something interesting else that's happening. I don't know to what extent it's happening around the rest of the country, but all of the cases that I mentioned in the last 3 to 4 weeks, are unsolved. I mean, and this is a small neighborhood. Everybody knows who did it. It was the baby's daddy. It was, it was gang related. We know more about what happened. We know who did it. And he's not caught. He's not caught. And none of the others. So what the police are doing, there is something different that's happening now. They're because of the climate, the political climate, COVID, what have you, they're not arresting these people.
Wow.
For me, it's like,
because of COVID, you're not going to arrest me for murder, sir?
Yeah, and the kids know that.
I think it's strategic. When they need to do that, they will. They can drag out the investigation as long as they want at this point and get paid for as long as it's out. Look at Breonna Taylor. Her murder is being refused to be trialed. We all know who did it. Everybody around the world knows who's done it, and it's purposely being ignored. So it's strategic.
You said it happened in front of your house. Have you even been questioned? Sorry, Ben, but I'm saying it happened in front of your house. You, sir, you. And have you even been questioned about it by the police? Okay, because I know a lot of these situations, when people go back and investigate on them by themselves, they ask the people and they haven't even been questioned. So it's like, I wouldn't be surprised if you, whose house has happened in front of, they haven't questioned you, because it's not like they're trying to even go anywhere with it anyway.
But it's gang related, so people aren't talking. Even the mother, there were 4 witnesses in the car. The mother was in the car. The 14-year-old brother was in the car, and the 9-month-old baby was in the car. The girl was 2 months pregnant, and they shot her 20 times.
Oh my God.
No one else got shot.
Why are you telling me this story? No. 20 times.
So it was, what happened was,
just so everyone's aware, 29 times, that's emotional. This is an emotional killing. No one's gonna waste 29 bullets.
20.
That's emotional killing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very point out.
Yeah, that's true. Could have just done a head top, to be honest, if they thought about it.
Yeah, if it was like a concise murder, you just kill them like straight bullet to the head, or however you do it precisely. But that clearly is an emotional killing. Wow.
20 bullets in front of the mother, brother.
It shows why we practice intelligence. We have to understand that.
19-year-old girl pregnant, 2 months pregnant by a rival gang member. So anyway, I just, that this whole chapter brought that back up for me.
Yeah, just another prophecy that Dr. Frances Cress Welsing could foresee because of the structure that's in place and the lack of structure that's in place for us as a people practicing group self-respect or any understanding of emotional intelligence.
Subside. Oh, rest in peace.
So for closing comments, I would say I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to read from this chapter.
Well, I'm a question I want to ask, and I want everyone to keep their responses as concise as possible, because I think that's going to aid in the answer being as authentic as possible. So, do you think the the people who have been classified as black, do you think if they continue to not educate their kids on racism, white supremacy, do you think if they're continue to be dishonest with the reality of our current reality, which is that a reality that is dominated by entities that all lead to our destruction? So do you guys think that the black race will eventually cease to exist? You know, and that could be symbolically, or that could be like physically and literally. I personally do believe that if the majority of black people go into a deep sleep and no one's talking about this anymore, and people aren't having these conversations like we are, if that population continues to decrease, then definitely black people are going to be like new dinosaurs, meaning that we're not going to really be around, and even if we are around, we're going to be in such a exploited way, meaning like we're going to be living, walking entertainment vehicles, meaning like when you see a black person, it's like good luck. Oh, I saw a black person today. Population 0.1% planet Earth. So that is a very very uh, real life dystopic thing that can happen. So do you guys think that's possible? Do you think the black genocide will be aided in the lack of honest parenting? Yeah.
I want to go ahead and say that we are too valuable to white supremacy, like to actually for us to go extinct, under the basis that if we was going to be extinct, they would have done it by now. They would have found a way through slavery or by slavery to make that a possibility, but we just multiply based on the fact of our genetic alignment, which is put in place for the sake of what we are experiencing on this planet and what we are having to overcome together globally. I think that you're very wise in making the comment that if what we are doing now decreases, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to increase based on, just like astrologically speaking, we are moving into the age of information where information cannot be hidden from us. The only way that they can confuse us is with extra information that doesn't make sense, but we have the power of intuition, and actually just when truth hits, it hits, and it can't unhit. And it's up to you to now choose to ignore it. But I feel like we're living in circumstances like COVID, where you're forced to be told how to live your life for the sake of your health or survival. You're going to get to a stage where you have to start questioning, critically thinking, what choices do you want to make? I'm not saying that there's not sheep out there, but I feel like it's impossible for us to go backwards at this point. That's how I would answer that question.
I would agree.
Powerful.
Thank you so much for answering, man.
They have about as much chance of black annihilation and black annihilation as they do of extracting all of the resources out of the motherland. And that's what they're in the process of trying to do, right? There's a mad land grab going on in Africa to extract the plutonium and uranium and the cobalt and the gold, and it's hilarious. Well, not hilarious, but it's outrageous because they could never. They probably, we don't know, but they have probably not even scratched the surface of the extent of the resources on that vast land in just the Congo alone, right? So this feeble attempt that they're making to steal our identity, that's truly what it really is. The attempt to, like Trey said, to even if it's a symbolic genocide of the black, right? It happened to us. They attempted by stripping us, they would cut our tongue out for speaking our own language, the black slaves. They would cut the first offense of trying to learn to read, they would cut your tongue out or cut a limb off of you, practicing your own culture. They would be, it got to the point where they would chop your hand off for playing your drums. That's why I think the most important thing for all black boys and black men to do is to get a drum I just got me a djembe, a badass hand custom drum from Guinea. And I'm doing my meditation and playing that drum, and that releases trauma.
I'm gonna tap into that for sure.
They hate the drum. They hate hearing those drums. That's how you get them, with the drum, right? And they'll never be able to, not with the vastness of Africa and the Caribbean. But that said, they're making a gallant attempt all through Africa. You see these, especially in Kenya where I live, you don't see, like in West Africa, the African style of attire. You see all Western, and Christian. They're fanatical Christians in Kenya. And they have succeeded in what Trey's concern is like just eliminating Black culture, that our African origin. That's, but how could you possibly, it's amazing that it's like something that you can see with your own two eyes, right in front of your face. But because the vast majority of us have been convinced that we're inferior, that same person who we see as superior to us will tell us, well, no, you're looking right at me. You can see that I'm an albino, but I'm not an albino. That's not true. They haven't done any, they can't prove, they haven't proved that. There's any evidence of the, scientific evidence or proof of that, although I'm looking at it right with my own two eyes, right in front of my face. You can look out at the sky and look in the night sky and see the Black feminine deity. Look at the Black earth. Look at the Black womb. All men and women alike come from woman. Not out of, nobody come out of no man. No, they tried to tell you the woman came from a man's rib. That's to keep you oppressed, inferior, less than, not equal to, and convince you that you came from a man's rib. Ain't that some shit? That you came from, try to convince women that women came from men so that they will always be over you. That's so that they'll always be over you. When it's the abject opposite. The opposite is that creation is feminine and destruction is masculine. The sun is masculine. Air and fire, destruction. The earth is feminine, Black. You got the sunlight, the Black earth. That's creation. Soil, water, and creation. It's simple. It's right in front of our face.
And I think it's so interesting that you bring up the right in our face aspect. I think racism is always right in our face, but we've been trained to look away. And it's so interesting. I was watching this film called Rampage, and it's about it's based on the 1980s classic arcade video game Rampage with the same name, and basically it's about this albino gorilla that gets mutated by uh, by this alien this alien thing that people who are messing. Basically, this corporation is like messing around the space, and they bring back something. It mutates all the animals that get near it. So the albino gorilla is the best friend of The Rock. So the actor The Rock plays his character who works at the zoo, and they have this albino gorilla, and this albino gorilla is white skinned, blue eyed, and it behaves before it mutates. It behaves like a very very peaceful, like kind of like a regular a melanated gorilla, I guess, a gorilla with black fur. But the moment this alien thing interacts with it, uh, also the mutation thing makes it gets bigger and bigger rapidly. It gets bigger and bigger. It doesn't stop growing. So eventually, it gets super big and super aggressive, and yet like everyone is trying to talk to it, trying to reason with it. Everyone's trying to reason with this creature of destruction. And I feel like that's more rare. That's happening now. Everyone's trying to reason with white supremacy. Everyone's trying to talk to it. Hey, can you be my ally instead? Hey, can you give me a grant? Can you help me publish my book? All these things. Can you fund my film? Like all these silly things. But I think I'm getting off track a bit. But yeah, albinos. Like yeah, clearly, I would say white people have to know that they're albinos, but they have to. I believe they know, but they're just not saying it out loud. They're in a closet about it, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyone got more for closing comments, or anyone got anything else they want to read?
That part, that what you read, Mary, brought tears to my eyes when I read it at first. When I first read it, and to find out that I've actually been a victim of this throughout most of my early adulthood, all through my life. That a walking dead person, living dead. Oh man, just because of that one that oh, this one line right here. Rock music.
Oh,
She says she's certain that in the attempt to make up for a mother's failure to hold, cuddle, and rock the child in infancy. And that's what motivated the invention and the creation of rock music.
Yeah.
Now, when you hear rock music, I instantly think of white people, but rock and roll, that's Little Richard. That's Little Richard and Chuck Berry and
Chuck Berry, yep.
And we were neglected. They were neglected babies and grew up and created this music to, wow. I mean, this lady who's writing this book is some other level of understanding and intelligence.
I totally agree with you. I had a flash of thoughts came to my head as well when I read that line in particular, and I just giggled to myself and I thought, she's wise, she's intelligent, and she's also extremely funny all in one. I was thinking she must have laughed to herself when she came up with this, but the analogy it makes so much sense. And if you think about it now, the association with rock music being white dominated now, or that the anarchists have taken it on board, they and according to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's theory as well, they feel the furthest inadequate and removed from the original love of the mother of Mother Africa, and then feeling detached and being albino and feeling inadequate. Of course, they will adopt rock music more than anybody else in any other genre of music. They've adopted rock and dominated it, and it's because of the level of inadequacy that they feel like they get aggression. They have mosh pits, and it's just like a space and place to just literally scream out the angst of inadequacy. It makes a lot of sense. So very good analogy.
And then it advanced and evolved into this wild acid rock and punk rock and Led Zeppelin and Kiss and all this disgusting behavior on stage.
Oh yeah, Ozzy Osbourne eating bats and shit on stage. Yeah.
You're throwing up blood and all that crazy, nasty, out, disgusting. Ah, it's not music.
I like Osborne family, but I still
Yeah.
like what music.
I-
That interpretation of it.
That used to be one of my guilty pleasures, watching the
Yeah.
Osbournes.
Yes.
So
I wasn't
yeah.
in my duty.
They got me there.
I watched it all the time together.
It was guilty for me. But yeah, so what I was gonna say for my closing comments is just as well, it was extremely triggering for me to read this, but it's highly necessary as well, because it allows us to, the question that she asks, it allows us to now put that into the forefront of how has things changed, how can we now apply it to our lives today, how can we see what areas are still being dominated, like through the government, of interactions with single parent households. How do we get Black fathers and mothers in the same household? One thing that I do notice and see in the UK here is Ghanaian families, whether or not the mother and father are together, they stay in the same household, or like they won't have the same room. And that stuck with me all throughout. Like I've observed this through like maybe 4 or 3 different parent households. So they do have some form of understanding, at least, or are practicing some form of group self-respect, to, even if they're separated, to operate in the same household with the children, so the children have imparted wisdom from both, which is highly necessary. And something that I always stuck in my mind, because everybody around me had single parent households. So when I did see households that were together, I always looked for like the romance in the relationship, or just some kind of interaction. And where I didn't see that, I still saw that they lived in the same household, and that's something that's definitely, stuck with me, like I said. So for my closing comments, I'm just really happy that we have some form of guidelines that we can go by and continue to enhance the work and do that next step further, so we can move closer to self-respect.
Can I just throw one last thing in here that I want to go back just for a second, because this is personal and not that well.
Please do.
It's just the last couple of sentences on page 266, which talks about the penis in the vagina for the female child and the heroin needle in the vein of the male child are both symbolic substitutes for the desired breast or bottle in the mouth that failed to take place sufficiency in early infancy and childhood. And I grew up in the drug culture. I mean, the crack epidemic took off, right? When I was in, my early adulthood. And when I read this, I just the same thing occurred, just that moment of clarity and this just unimaginable prophetic connection between early childhood trauma and neglect and drug addiction, sex addiction, street addiction, anything to replace that missing piece that the mother, and Iyanla Vanzant, a lot of sisters are mad at Iyanla Vanzant because she's saying, if you want to find out why these young Black men are killing each other and killing their women and killing people, go ask their mothers. Talk to the mothers.
Yeah.
So they got mad at her for that.
Why though? Why? Did she say something disrespectful? I don't get it.
Well, because in America, it's always the Black man is the target, is the enemy of the Black woman. Everything is our fault.
Black men ain't shit, right? That's what I heard. That's what I heard. That's what I keep hearing. That's what I keep hearing. Yeah.
I mean, you can even go on dating sites and they'll say no Black men. You don't see them saying no Asians, no whites, no Hispanics, but occasionally you'll see no Black men.
Yeah, just like when we move on to the next chapter, I can't wait to talk about that, because I also feel like just that men are trash, like that generalization, it's a false problem as well, because black males are literally dealing with the whole weight of white supremacy on them the most, and they're expected to still be optimal in a relationship where two dysfunctional people are trying to function. So of course you're going to see men as trash when they have all these other levels of oppression on their being. How can they be themselves or be adequate in a relationship when they don't even know what it takes to be in an emotionally developed relationship?
I just want to, for my closing comments, I just want to piggyback on what Mary just said. When I was at Berkeley, me, Swa, and another a black male led a men against toxic masculinity workshop. And inside this, while we were doing these workshops, we learned that men, especially black men and like men of color, have been like really stripped from their emotional capacity to be vulnerable. So what you see is a lot of vulnerability being replaced with anger. For example, I had a Indian a member of the group, and basically this is like we just read books about masculinity, like unpacked masculine based trauma, and this Indian kid was really trying to get to the bottom of his problems, and he had learned that he had hated women because he was never really allowed to be vulnerable with women, never allowed to cry in front of his mom, never allowed to like express his insecurities in front of his mom, always having to like suppress his emotions, and all these things got to him. So and that was a common theme. Like men would confess like their hatred of their mothers, basically the person who was supposed to care for them the most. So yeah, I do think we have to raise children in an emotionally responsible way, and allow like boys to be vulnerable, and allow girls to feel protected, and see what love is, see what respect is, so that when they enter relationships, these things are like already normalized, and not anything that's you don't take anything less than that. Any
Yeah,
comments?
bringing this to reality is sad. I'm gonna have to roll a fat one. I haven't had a drink in like 2 months. I might have to go get I might have to go get me some tequila after this. Because this is bringing up some serious feelings.
I'm actually really wanting some wine right now. I'm really wanting some wine at the moment, because this stuff is it's a heavy topic, because it's our reality, basically. And this
Especially when you think about like white people.
What was that?
Especially when you think about how white people and their families up in their communities, they have experienced some kind of functional nurturing from their parents. They experience a collective group togetherness in many cases based on what their socioeconomic status, their culture, whatever, they're the Jews, whatever, the Irish Catholics or whomever, they are experiencing love amongst each other. Whereas, I mean, we may go to church and hug and kiss or go to but we go back into our homes, and we go back to our jobs and back into our communities, and we go back to that slave mentality of cursing each other, gossiping about each other, name calling each other down, and then go to church and hugging and kissing. Whereas it's not love. It's not true love and admiration and respect for each other, and teaching our children by the way we treat each other. All they see their parents doing is argue. We don't allow, I don't allow none of that in my house. I don't allow. I go by those rules Frances Welsing was talking about. You know, we don't curse each other. We don't name call, not even in play. We don't do that anymore. You know, I just don't think we had any idea how devastating that is to you know that whole playing the dozens and capping on each other and oh, devastating to the self-esteem.
They call it back. Yeah, banging on each other, all those things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's normalized.
yeah.
And white people don't do that. There's not even a term for white people talking about each other's mama. You know, we got a term for it. You know, playing the dozen.
That is so true.
They
Wow.
make TV shows about it. They made a TV show. Remember the TV show where people on MTV where people will like make fun of each other's mamas?
I used to watch that all the time. And I never
Is it
thought
black
about it in the
show?
context of degrading our mothers, and while there's not even
Yeah,
that context.
and what are you? And symbolically, you're simply making a mockery of the bearer of your genetics, of your gene pool. You're just making a mockery of your creator and then the womb you came from. So it is, and it shows a complete lack of deep, deep, deep lack of self-respect. You know, to conjure up, mama jokes and because whatever joke you conjure up is just a mirror to yourself. You're talking about yourself, because that's the only way it could even be existed, unless you went to this person's house and like, live with him for a few months and then learn his mother's behavior patterns. If you didn't do that, all your jokes are about your own mom. Yeah, every joke you create is about your own mom. Because it's all projection. All insults are projections. Most accusations are projections. But yeah, so are we all clear for the chapter? I'm about to close the recording. Move on. Good? We good? All right.